and welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As a famous starship captain once said, and as another famous starship captain once said, whatever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we'll leave it to you to figure out who that might be. On this week, we are talking about making a big change in your life. And we want to hear from you. What episode of Star Trek do you think best shows a character making a big change in their life? Maybe for better, maybe for worse. We're gonna try to focus on the better stuff. But before we get to that,
rarely neutral in Star Trek, so probably
unless you're in the neutral zone and you don't want to be there, it's not very neutral out there.
I was going to say, nothing neutral about the neutral zone.
No, there's not.
That's my new. There's nothing neutral about the neutral zone.
Dr. Trek, if this is someone's first time on Life Support Live, what is this endeavor we are on?
Yeah, I've asked myself that many times, Dr. As Spock steepled his fingers. No, we've got a wonderful community here that turns up with us every week to talk about Star Trek, yay, and the mental health aspects of it. Not always with a quiz on Monday. Sometimes we're pretty lighthearted about it, but we're always going away with, thanks to you primarily, some tips to take away on, for daily living. But we do geek out first and foremost and use that as our lens. And I'm thrilled to share this spot with you every Saturday morning. Everybody, we've got a great chat here. If you are new, jump in our chat. We'll bounce back and forth with everybody in there, but there's a lot of great folks in there already.
There's a lot. I'm already trying to keep up with the chat. There's a lot of going on.
Nervous, everybody, because it's a historic show today. We're having our first guest on later.
Yes. Well, I'm also nervous because apparently this is the red shirt edition of Life Support Live. Larry, I'm not sure if we are in the TOS or the motion picture or the Next Generation timeline. That's going to have a big impact on how I'm feeling about our red shirts. You know, timelines are a little wibbly wobbly, especially if you have anyone who might be sending you into different times in the time zone. We do have a special guest. Larry, tell us about our special guest who's going to be joining us in just under an hour.
Yeah, so at the top of the hour, guys, and don't worry, we're going to have a full Life Support Live format today. But joining us at the top of the hour, with all the if all the EPS systems are in line, is the author of one of the. There's a couple of great books that are out this holiday. There's several great books out this holiday. One of them is.
Now, these are the only two good books, Larry. This is it.
Only two. Amazingly, one person wrote both. No,
yeah.
This is Mr. Spock's little book of Mindfulness by Glenn Dakin, who's going to join us hopefully at the top of the hour. And this is a wonderful book. And as I will tell him, this was way more than I was expecting. But since this was a book about mindfulness, I thought it would be perfect for us today. And Dr. Ali to turn his professional chops loose on it. But no, I thought it was going to be a collection of Spock sayings. And it is, but it's a lot more, and there's a lot of, like we try to do here, there's a lot of good help and good insight, but an awful lot of Trek twinkle of the eye in it, too. So, even for Vulcans.
It's a lovely book. I had the joy of reading it this week, and it's a great book for 2020. So, we have the author of Spock's...
Glenn Dakin, if I didn't say his name.
Mr. Spock's Little Book of Mindfulness, How to Survive in an Illogical World by Glenn Dakin. I don't think it could be any more illogical than it is right now, and so I'm very excited to have that.
The other title that he has out right now is Star Trek Cocktails, A Stellar Compendium. And talk about mental health. Well, okay. In moderation,
whatever spectrum of coping you'd like to take, Glenn's got it covered. So we're gonna be talking about that in a little bit at the top of the hour. And until then, we have a lot to discuss. So we, as we have been doing with Lower Decks and now Star Trek Discovery, we're taking this week's episode and having that inspire a larger conversation about Star Trek and mental health. This week's episode is inspired by Star Trek Discovery's Terra Firma Part 2. Now, Larry, without getting into big spoilers here, quick impressions of Terra Firma Part 2.
No spoilers?
I know. It's really hard with this week.
Well, Terra Firma, the two-parter, and especially Part 2, seems to be serving two masters as far as plot goes. So there's a big arc that involves Georgiou making some big life decisions. Also, we continue the arc of Discovery trying to figure out exactly what's going on with the burn and the pieces of the puzzle there. We get one we're on a one piece of knowledge per week budget. That's our that's our diet. We get one crumb a week. So anyway, no, I thought it was well done. Visual effects are done. And yes, folks, I'm holding back on even that just for spoilers. I don't know. You guys can argue it out in chat if we're being overly protective here or not. But
yeah. I don't know what this is. This is just Georgiou doing something.
Just Georgiou and Burnham there with Burnham with
they're
the dread.
Just hanging out. So. Nothing unusual or amazing that we haven't seen in decades. But it's just they're just doing their thing.
She's got that major life choice look in her eye there.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what we kind of want to talk about. So this week and last week's episode, Terra Firma Part 1 and 2, gave me a lot of Tapestry vibes. I know it's a cliche at this point how much Larry and I like to talk about Tapestry from Next Generation. Yeah. But this episode is really about Georgiou revisiting decisions in her past and realizing how much she has changed. And this episode involves her making a big change. So that got Larry and I thinking, how can we focus on that theme? Because that is a theme we haven't directly taken on before. And Larry, there's a lot in the canon for us to explore. So let's open that up. Let's open up the briefing room here.
Yeah, and the briefing room, guys, we do have a structure here. We have the briefing room. We're going to geek out on examples from Trek. Then Ollie has his counselor's log, and he'll have an away mission of ideas, things you can take with you. The counselor's log is looking at them through that lens. Along the way, I'll throw in my K3 factor of deep diving some pure Star Trek background goodness under our theme today. But yeah, and here's the thing as I started to think about this, the idea today of making major life change. Up until the streaming era here, the last couple of years, Star Trek has famously been standalone shows. And the further back in time you go, TV was all about, oh my God, don't change the characters unless they suddenly turn up missing at the new season because they all, where's Adam? Oh, he ran into town for supplies. And we never saw him again. I'm a kid on Bonanza here. But yeah, TV was not very realistic about reflecting some of those life situations. So we've at least gotten a little more realistic about letting characters have major arcs.
Yeah, and a big part of that was designing a show where people can jump in and out. You don't have to have seen the whole back catalog in order to understand what is happening here. And that's changed over time.
Or telling the local stations what order to run the syndicated strip showing every day after school, whatever. Right.
But even with that in mind, going back to some of our original characters and moments, there's some pretty big changes that these characters go through. Larry, you and I both ended up picking examples from the original series cast that take place in the movie.
I was going to say, see, there you go. Nothing really changed until you got to a movie every 2 years, and you needed a big bang,
and boy, did they give us some big bangs. Starting with the motion picture, Larry, you had a good one for speaking of Spock, you had a good one for the motion picture. Yeah,
well, it's like a token. I mean, some of these I feel like, well, it's a token moment, but no, it's Spock embracing emotion after his encounter with V'ger, and the tear. I kept trying to find the scene with the single tear, and I couldn't find it. It was like, wait a minute, am I watching is this a tearless edition I'm looking at? It was the main theatrical, but no, this simple feeling is the scene, and that's a big moment there. Yeah, I also think of Kirk realizing Star Trek II. We've used it before for other themes, but Kirk realizing that taking the admiral's seat
was not the same thing as having a captain's seat. And McCoy's advice, a major life change that he had to get back to.
So I want to just ask you about Spock just for a moment.
Oh, okay.
Why? I mean, because Spock is a big deal.
Spock.
There we go, and that's the other reason why. So
Mindfulness.
so not only does he embrace emotions at the end of motion picture, but he's debating with this during the story, right? Like he doesn't. He's debating whether or not to undergo colonar, if I remember correctly, earlier
At
in the
motion
movie.
picture, yes.
Yeah, in the motion picture. So why do you think this is that he does decide to embrace this embrace his emotions, not completely go down the Vulcan path, and then I've got a part 2 to that question, which I'll save for after you answer part 1.
All right. Well, we've got other people here in the room that want to ask questions too. No, no, no. He's just had the encounter with V'ger, and he says V'ger is cold and barren. It's information only, and it's seeking, is this all there is? It's the age-old question. And he's just had that. And, all through the series, McCoy would always, it's a 60s point of view, but McCoy would always say, oh, you're like a walking computer, and that whole thing. And of course, that's his Vulcan culture. That's his upbringing. And yeah, he was undergoing the process to purge all emotion when V'ger showed up. So he's not, to Spock with his excellent mental health, even though he's in I don't want to say a crisis state, but he's in a major life change event here. He feels like he's just had, like we do it's the good kind of trauma. I mean, I guess it could have been deadly trauma, but it was the good kind of trauma where you really, it's the life. I saw my life flash before my eyes, or I saw everybody else's life flash before my eyes.
Yeah.
And he's not going to go whole hog. He's not going to come up and bounce out as the wacky Vulcan here all of a sudden. He's embracing his Vulcan heritage, but he just sees there's more, and he goes to the nth degree without fracturing and totally giving up on his culture, his ways, his life until then. So it was a healthy...
But not the nth degree. That's a different story.
Smart. Very smart.
Thank you. As the comments section are saying, I'm here every week, folks. I'm here for you. Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Larry.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, that he has seen what pure logic does and how the limits of pure logic. I think we have to remember that Vulcans do experience emotion. They just do not act on it in the way that humans do. They do not express it the way humans do. And they have a very sophisticated way of meditating on managing their emotions. And I think Spock has always had a hard time with that. And part of it might be because of his human identity. Part of it might be because of this idea of stereotype threat, that he doesn't want to be seen as an emotional Vulcan because of his human side, because he's been bullied for all of this sort of stuff. But it's wonderful to see Spock go through this evolution in the motion picture. And as I will defend Star Trek Into Darkness, I will always defend the motion picture. I think the motion picture has some beautiful moments in it. I know it's slow by modern standards, and especially
It's
compared to Wrath of Khan.
2001ing. It's not Star Warsing.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's much more of a 2001 than it is A New Hope. But it's got some beautiful moments in it, and then you mentioned Kirk, and that was an example I wanted to talk about, where a big fundamental change we see is Kirk's relationship to Klingons, and we know what that relationship was in the original series. It was very adversarial. It was not friendly.
They killed his son.
Those Klingon bastards, and they killed his son. So in the motion picture series, we see Kirk's son. We see his relationship with his son evolve. We see the death of his son at the hands of Klingons. And then we see in Star Trek VI, Jim, they're dying. Let them die. And we see that journey to peace. So let's talk about that for a moment. This is our episode is called, there it is, making a big change. This is a massive change, as much as it is for Spock to embrace emotions. So what's going on here with Kirk? Why does he overcome all of the prejudice he has towards Klingons and find a way to make peace?
He's
Why? Why, Larry? Why?
You're just full of questions today. No, he's enough of a dyed in the wool. I mean, they talk about Cold Warriors, and it was literally a Cold Warrior, motif. It's back in that mindset, which a lot of people have. A lot of our younger fans aren't carrying that mindset around these days. But he's enough of a steeped in Starfleet admiral flag level officer to know. I mean, it's a battle for him, but he does overcome it, to know the strategic value here. And then he's got McCoy, the good parrot on his shoulder too, to know that this is an opening. If nothing else, he can put it in the mental box of, this is a strategic opening that we have to take. And then again, he's enough of a historian to know, do we really want, if he really loves Abraham Lincoln, he knows what happened when Lincoln's force for good was removed from the equation after the Civil War, and what, Marshall Plan, all that. If you actually let a society that was huge totally collapse, you're asking for trouble later on. So if nothing else, it's totally, it's totally transactional here, that it's in their best interest to have the Klingons not fall apart. But that's totally weighing on his emotion here of, ha 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 ha, you want to dance on their grave. But there's a lot of graves and a lot of others who are still surviving, and that's not going to be a good thing for.
I love that explanation because it ties in very nicely.
You want me to say it again?
Yeah, please. Let me get my recorder out. So my Star Trek Generations recorder, very futuristic recorder out. I love that. I love that explanation because it ties to two other things that can be related to making a big change.
You're welcome.
We talk about with Spock this critical moment where he learns this this very important lesson of the path he doesn't want to go down. Here with Kirk, it is very much related to, I think, two things. One is the environment has completely changed, and his primary mission is to protect the Federation, is to serve Starfleet, and he knows he learns over the course of the movie that it would be very bad for the Federation to let the Klingons
let them die.
To let them die. Yeah. There would be a massive destabilizing force on the whole quadrant, on the Alpha and Beta quadrant, right?
I was gonna say
on both. I've read Star Trek cartography. I know I should be referring to both quadrants. The other thing he's also learned, I know. Right on cue, Larry. The other thing I think Kirk has learned is revenge is hollow. He's seen Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. He knows what happened.
It's hollow.
Yeah. He knows what might happen if he goes down that path, and that is not a path that he wants to go down. So that is a big change that happens, and a change definitely for the better. There's a lot of examples that are coming in the chat that I want to dive into.
We've been overflowing on the chat, guys, and I should say, since we're going to have Glenn with us today, we may be dipping into the chat a little less than normal, guys. So bear with us. We're still looking.
But we'll what we miss, we'll get on the tail end. So I want to go through some of these examples that are coming up in the chat. I do want to say Tim had a comment about Star Trek Discovery pulling a big move this week, and then he said, the Mandalorian said, "Hold my blue milk," and they had a big moment. Yes, definitely. But Johnny mentions lessons from TNG. I am blanking on what episode that is, Larry.
That's Picard and his girlfriend playing music in the Jeffries tube.
Oh yeah. Oh, we haven't talked about that episode in a long time, but that's a big one. I was when I was looking at TNG episodes, they were, I don't know why, Larry, there were almost always Picard episodes that were coming up for me. So
When you
I don't know. I don't know
when you
what that
get paid
means.
the big bucks, you get paid the big scripts. So
Yeah. Whether it's Tapestry or whether it's the very end of All Good Things and Picard joining the poker game, or then his own TV show.
Or
There's
it's family and what to do after actual
yes,
physical trauma. Yeah.
and absolutely. We can talk about Picard all day here.
Well, you could go home again. Could be worse.
Yeah. Jared mentions Wesley and Ro on
Ro,
TNG.
I had
Ro,
yes.
yeah. Tell me about Ro, Larry. You wanted to talk about Ro.
No, I mean, and you know what? And as I talked about Ro, I'm like, okay, well, there's Tom Paris, there's Mariner on Lower Decks. It's people who have had a troubled life, even in the perfect future. People who have had troubled lives, and she's coming from her Bajoran refugee background. And somewhere along the way, people make a difference in their life. Sometimes it's an external factor that helps you make a change in life.
Yeah.
But starting with Guinan, and then eventually Picard, no thanks to Riker, though, that she's able to make it. Basically, it's like, come over to the light. It's like, do you want to be, always bumping heads with everybody in life because of your angry background, basically, you acting out about the crap of your life? Or do you want to find a path to some stability, some solace, some calmness, and that's a lot of work too. It's a lot like, I don't know, what, addiction recovery. So, some things where I don't think she didn't have a chemical variable in her equation, but it's like it's whatever the factors are that have to align for you to make this big change. Sometimes it's not just a thing. Well, here's my yes list and my no list, and I'm going to compare and contrast them. Sometimes it's not that clinical. So,
I think for both
that's why,
characters,
that's why it's big for Ro. She's overcoming her lifetime of abuse and trauma to make a change for the better.
Yeah, and I think she is learning, as is Wesley. What are their core values? What are the things that really mean so much to them? And how can they live a life that is consistent with the things they believe? And they both come to the conclusion that means not being in Starfleet.
Right.
And going down a different path. And then Victoria says, Victoria, this is always our problem. All I can think of are DS9 episodes. Pick a character, and they fulfill this theme.
To which I can add, I think in our modern era, pick any Picard character, if not Picard episode.
Yeah, that also works. That's also.
I'm going to choose an android body over my actual one, or I'm going to let that happen. Okay, big change.
So with DS9, I wanted to pick a character we talk a little bit less about, and the character that came up for me was Rom.
Okay.
I was thinking about Sisko and Sisko's prejudice towards the Ferengi, and then that got me, and how that changes because of Jake's relationship with Nog. But that eventually got me to Rom. And Rom starts out as just this server at Quartz.
Yes.
Yeah, and he kind of... One's doofus is another person's server. But he kind of tinkers with the holosuites, kind of keeps things going. And then he becomes the
was
mind.
Never gone for an audition. Let's just remember that.
Yeah.
He never lost work.
He becomes the mind behind the self-replicating minefield, and plays a critical role in the defense against the Dominion. So I think his make a big change really comes from people giving him opportunities and not overlooking him. I think he was someone who was very much overlooked, both within his own family, but then within the culture he was living in. And he is someone who, because of the more systemic elements around him, didn't really get the opportunities that someone like maybe O'Brien did get in his life. So I think that's it's more the environment and the limitations there that kept.
And O'Brien, it wasn't cello school, but O'Brien gave him some of those opportunities. Lita was with him and helped, as a bolster. So even if his brother didn't, and I'm sure I know I'm trying to remember a specific scene, but I think Nog, his son was all for it because his son was embarrassed at times by his dad. So
and speaking of DS9. A big moment here, Larry, that you reminded me of was Sisko embracing his role as emissary as well.
It was hard to find. I mean, he was like slowly sliding into it, but he did finally, embrace it. big change. I mean, a very pedestrian one, but still it was big, was also, speaking of O'Brien deciding to leave cushy Starfleet and take himself and his family to a broken down station on the frontier. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and risking his marriage and his family to do that for whatever reason. A bigger paycheck, I know, but still.
We could spend so much time on DS9. Linda says Jake telling Ben he doesn't want to join Starfleet. Nog declaring his intention to join Starfleet. Oh my gosh, so many DS9 episodes. The Chasing the Face of Evil. Damar goes through. Oh my gosh, Damar. Let's get some. Can we get some Kanar for Damar here? Damar is this whole thing in a nutshell. I mean, the arc of this character going from Ducat's second in command, going to just this other person on the bridge.
A one-line flunky, push the button, Damar. Yes, sir. Yes.
To killing Zial. To becoming the liberator of Cardassia. I think Damar's story is one of a patriot who wants to do what he thinks is in the best interest of Cardassia, but what's in the best interest of Cardassia changes a lot. Sure. Yeah, so it's again the environment.
Kirk, the Klingon.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
I'm sorry, I took the words out of your mouth there.
No, I'll put them back in. Thank you, Lair. Thank you. Trip transferring off of the NX-01. I completely forgot about that. I was thinking a lot more of T'Pol and T'Pol's relationship with humanity. Right. T'Pol goes through this big arc, but I forgot about that moment where Trip transfers off the NX-01.
You could say also Archer going all Mal Reynolds. Oh, that was a K3 I could have done. I'll save it for another time. You could say Archer giving up his goody-goody confronted with the Xindi disaster, and himself and his crew and Earth having to grow up, get tough and join the big boys out there during the Xindi year.
Yeah.
How that resolved, get his cojones up and take on, and not always be the Boy Scout, which is a sad choice, but it's how they got through. And Journey's in, for Wesley, deciding to go off with the Traveler. Thank you, Jared.
Let's jump over to the Delta Quadrant. Homestead from Voyager for Neelix was another one. And if I'm remembering correctly, that's when Neelix decides to join the colony of Talaxians and leave the USS Voyager. We talked about that a few weeks ago, Larry. I forget in what context, but I remember us talking about it. And that seemed to make a lot of sense, that this character has always sort of drifted and never really had a sense of stability until he came to Voyager. And I think he really liked that sense of family and realized that this might be his last opportunity to have that with other Talaxians. And that if he continues with Voyager, he's eventually going to never have that opportunity.
Far, far, far from home. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that making a big change makes a lot of sense why he did that.
But it's okay. They took lots of pictures to go on.
Yeah. Scott said Denise Crosby making a big change near the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, not as a character. Yeah. But, and as often with big changes in life, having some regrets maybe, and wanting it both ways. Yeah.
Still on the Voyager front, we have B'Elanna finally getting the guts to confess she's in love with Tom in Day of Honor.
Yeah. The B'Elanna and Tom both finally, winding up together. And another one, it's so muddy because it was kind of mishandled, which is a sad thing. But then again, the way it was handled to begin with was kind of sad.
Yeah.
Was I started to say Keelix and Ness. Keelix and Ness. Yeah. Now they were handled much better than poor Neelix and Ken. No, their breakup at the end, after people were like, "Oh, were they a couple?"
Yeah.
They kept saying they were a couple, which was sad. But yeah, they eventually decided to part and go ways. But at parting, I gave you an image for another one that I thought of later after we even talked, was in good old DS9. I'm jumping back to DS9. But that whole thing of the Bajoran rite of separation, when Lita and Bashir, who was her original boyfriend
yeah.
at the station, they have the good old Bajorans. They have a ritual for everything, and they're on Risa of all places, except the fact that it's perfect, and they do the rite of separation,
Yeah.
and have this formally, oh no, we're all good here, bang, we've done it, and now we can go see other people.
And just to take a couple more, Charlotte says, Enterprise, when Archer has to make the call if they should assist the species Phlox predicts, will be extinct within a couple of centuries, which of course is a precursor to the Prime Directive. That really, much like a Supreme Court decision, that sets up the precedent for everything that's to come later on. I think he has a line in that episode, maybe one day our people will have some kind of directive that guides us, but we don't have that yet.
Maybe when we've had a little more experience all being astronauts on some sort of Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost painful to hear it. Maybe. Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then those men will build rocket ships to take them to the stars.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Jared says preemptive strike in TNG for Ro.
Yes.
You know what? We've got 20 minutes. We've got a lot of good examples, but if we're going to compress the day, should we?
Yeah. Let's jump forward to the counselor's log here, and I'll try to kind of get through this, kind of summarize it pretty well. So, a lot of times when we think about trying to make a big change, we think about self-control, we think about motivation within ourselves. But what a lot of the research has found is your environment and your identity are sometimes even more important in making a big change than any kind of internal motivation. That's why I love the example of Kirk so much, that his environment, the circumstances around his environment were changing, and his identity as a Starfleet officer is something that really helped him to make that change and to overcome this prejudice he has. So one of the things when we want to make a big change in our own life, something that we have to think about is how do we get connected with the identity that we're trying to change into? How do we surround ourselves with people who are living that identity? And how do we change in our environment to make it easier to make that type of change?
Is it a cheat if it feels like it's a change you have to make? Let's say let's like Georgiou, spoilers, a little. Let's say it's a health issue, and people have to change their diet or their lifestyle to survive. It's pretty cut and dried. Is that a cheat, or is that that could be just as big a stop smoking, change the diet, all those kinds of things. Yeah,
it's added motivation. It's urgent motivation, and it's oftentimes very emotional motivation. There's a great analogy I like from a book called, I think it's called Switch by the Heath brothers. One's a writer, one's a psychologist. And they talk about when you're trying to change behavior, the metaphor is a rider, an elephant, and a path. So the rider is like you and me. That represents your intellect, and you're sitting on top of an elephant. You can have the best plan, but the elephant represents your emotions. If you don't feel anything about it, you're not moving. And an elephant is very powerful once it's moving, but if it doesn't want to move, it doesn't move. So it has to emotionally resonate with you. So if a doctor tells you, the Leonard Nimoy documentary made by Julie Nimoy is very clear about that his motivations to change his health after he was diagnosed with COPD and to stop smoking, those two things came together. So if someone tells you need to stop doing this, otherwise you might die, well, that gets the elephant powerfully motivated to make some change. And so what the rider can do, the rider can make a path that guides the elephant along, but the rider alone, you can't just brute intellect yourself into making change. So these things have to come together. There's a great book, which I do not have here. It's in my other room, called Atomic Habits.
You don't have another room, but it's fine to pretend.
Yeah, no, this is it. This is what you see is what you get. If anyone's interested in this topic, check out Atomic Habits. It is the best book I've seen on this topic. I'm going to talk more about how to do this in just a moment with the counselor, with the away mission. But with that, Larry, I want to turn it over to you for this week's K3.
Oh yeah, well, here's where we take K3 is the only indicator we have of mental health mentioned in the original series there on the BioBid monitor. That's where the name comes from for some of you more recent. I haven't talked about that in a while, but yeah, so here's where we do a deep dive on my end of things into Trekland, but still under the in the real world of Star Trek, the production side of things, under each week's theme. And change is the essential nature of all things. Yes, that's in here too. As a famous Vulcan once said, but that happens with productions too. We can all sit and recite, how the different series changed, how the different series in turn changed what we think of as Star Trek. And in case you hadn't noticed, Dr. Ali, that's been happening a lot the last couple of years too.
I've noticed this.
But one of the times is this as a parallel to this, thinking of individuals and also as the series, not as a franchise piece, but as a company, as in a company of actors and a company like you think of a theatrical company. So that's a family, but there's also a cohesiveness that has a top, it has a Rick Berman or a Gene Roddenberry or a Alex Kurtzman at the top, as a body. And one of the times that the entire body made a change with some success both ways, also some, ultimately maybe not enough change, was in my own memory, my own witnessing was the change from the success of, what continuing a franchise looked like, and going into spinning off the S9 meant one thing, doing Voyager meant another. I talk about the pendulum swings all the time. And it was even bigger. People have a hard time remembering this now, but making Enterprise was a huge change because for the first time they broke off just pulling out 24th century props and costumes out of the closet, and altering that. Something I thought they'd never do was spend money on a new environment and a new look. And they went back with the prequel idea, which I loved. Some people didn't like it, but I've been screaming for that for 10 years. But it wasn't just a cosmetic thing either. They were Rick and then Brannon were very concerned about getting the company out of the 24th century, not just the fan mindset, but the audience, but the company too. And they really looked to have a fresh breath. They thought the way to the franchise, the future of the franchise, and in hindsight it was all about what Enterprise would be. And this new look, we're going back 200 years in time to set stories. Even more, my memory is even more than Nemesis, which is maybe part of Nemesis' problem. There was more secrecy and stress and emphasis, and the stakes were higher with Enterprise than it was even with Nemesis. Because Nemesis was like, oh, it's on autopilot. It's another TNG movie. What can go wrong? And to that end, basically, everybody had to re-audition. The cast changes, but the real people that make the show, people had to be, and there were people that were let go and changed. And I sent, that's what that image there is. I don't know if I kept you guessing with that one or what. So yeah, so for most of the first, so here, the left side are people who had been working. Alan Sims is the top prop master. He had alternated with Joe Longo at the beginning of Next Gen, but he had been prop master in every week, or at least every other week, since the beginning of Next Generation. And it was they let him go and brought in Craig Binkley for Enterprise. And second row there, Dennis Danger Matalone had been the stunt coordinator since second season Next Generation through everything. And they decided to make a change and brought in Vince Dedrick Jr. for Enterprise. And several hairdressers along the way, but Josie Normand, who had an Emmy at the end of Voyager, had been there for several years, either on crew or as the head designer. And they brought in a guy named Michael Moore to be the hair designer for Enterprise. Everybody, Mike Westmore had to go and kind of re-audition, and they said, we want you to do more sketches, like try to be artsy and creative and not just come up with a thing on the run. And the first time we see it is the first time you bring it by, and then we tweak that. It's like we really want you to do more sketching out front. The great Marvin Rush, their DP, their director of photography, was on the verge of being traded out and changed just to freshen things up. And he said, you want me to change? I can change our look and our vibe. And he basically got his job back, but they were about to make a change, which is a crucial slot. So anyway, that's a change when the body as a whole, from Rick and Brandon on down, felt the weight of that. Now, as we all know the way history went, maybe, and Rick wanted to take a week, a year off and recharge, and the network didn't want him to, so wouldn't let them. So that's on them. But anyway, that's like the biggest single corporate studio change, or not the studio corporate, but within the company, the Star Trek players that I've seen. And I don't know, nothing, the Kurtzman era here there have been some big changes with the roots of Discovery, but it feels like a lot of that was just the bumpy road to getting something done.
Yeah,
and lots of decisions and changes are made, but this one with Enterprise was that everybody took a breath and made this huge conscious decision based on some factors, all at one time in several different facets, and that to me struck me as like a huge.
I think that's a really good point, Larry. I think about 2009, that film, and how much of a change that was in leadership. But this change you're talking about is a bigger one behind the scenes, because
within the existing.
Yeah, because there was this train of creatives behind the scenes who, from the Next Generation on to Deep Space Nine and Voyager, who had been really refined to process, and then that train came to an abrupt halt.
Call it the well-oiled machine. Yeah.
Yeah, they took the whole train off, put a whole new train on, and then started going in a very short period of time. And I will say that there's a lot of rockiness.
Unfortunately, they kept the same locomotives, but we won't go there. Okay.
There's a lot of bumpiness to the first season of Enterprise, and but one thing I really loved about Enterprise was the look. I loved how different it was, and I loved how it looked much more closer to our reality than the original series, and how it looked more like a submarine. The uniforms looked more like NASA. It made a lot of sense. The aesthetic made a lot of sense. So all of that behind the scenes production, I think they did a really great job of that. All right, Larry, how about a quick away mission?
Okay, I'm ready. I'm on the pad.
Yay.
It's beam. Okay.
All right. As the comment section is organizing our first get-together for us, I believe, let's jump into the away mission here. So this is something that I think is on a lot of people's minds. How do I make a big change in my life? It's something that often comes up with New Year's resolutions. We're not quite there yet, but it's coming up. So I wanted to give a very quick rundown of some things that people can think about. So the first off is really to think about, is this the right time for you to make a big change? I often ask people that. Like,
you're being rhetorical.
I'm being... Okay. What's the opposite?
You were looking right at me, so I didn't... I was like...
Larry, let's talk about all these problems you have.
You gotta pick it up, kid. Okay.
So 0 to 10, how much do you want to make a change in your life right now? I'll often ask people that, and sometimes they'll say 5. Like, I'm very ambivalent. Like, part of me wants to make a change, part of me doesn't want to make a change. So then it becomes really important to understand the way things are right now. How are they working out for you? What's good about the situation? What's less good about the situation? You really need to understand whatever you're doing that you don't like. Like, why? You're doing it for a reason. It's serving some kind of purpose. So before you even want to make a change, you got to understand the status quo and where you're at. And then what I try to help people to do is the book Atomic Habits has a really great description of this, is get to a 2-minute rule. What's a version of this change that you want to make that you can actually accomplish in 2 minutes. What's the smallest version of that change that you can make? So, for example, let's say you want to snack less. Well, one version of that change might be making all your snacks hard to access, putting them in some different location. Or if you want to reduce how much snacking you're doing, maybe it's, okay, we're going to order some smaller bowls. So you actually, you can still snack, but you're snacking out of a small bowl. So making the change really easy to do. And as I said before, changing the environment is much more effective than trying to muster some type of self-control and forcing yourself to make a change.
Well, putting it all on you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, internally where you can do yes.
Yeah. And locking in the change when you feel good about it, so it's easier to maintain when you feel less good about it. So this is like, Larry, have you ever gone grocery shopping when you're really hungry? Like, it's a disaster, right? You end up buying so much stuff that
always
you probably
take the junk food before you go shopping.
Oh yeah. Well, like go eat before you go grocery shopping,
or drink,
right?
or something. Yeah.
Tank
up on water. Yeah.
But that's a big part of making change, is make the change easy, make it a bit more automatic, and lock in those things when your self-control is better. You don't want to try to make those changes like later in the day when you're tired and you're hungry and all these kind of things. Like, do these things much earlier. So the other lesson that's really great from Atomic Habits, I just love that book. I can't sing its praises more, because it distills everything we know about behavior therapy into a very easy to read book.
It's a chapter about change in here too.
Yeah, which I want to get to.
Very nice of Glenn to include that on the day we have him. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about that. But there's a quote from Atomic Habits. If you want a habit to be a big part of your life, make its visual cues a big part of your life. So if you want to make a big change in your life, the environment around you has to completely change. And the last thing I'll say is, making intentions is actually really important. A lot of times people want to make a change, but they haven't thought through how they would do this. Oh, I want to exercise more. I want to eat more vegetables. I want to eat less junk, but they haven't made a plan as to how to do this. So one thing I always tell people is fill in the blanks here. I will do X at Y time in Z location. If you can just flesh that out, you're already like 80% there. I will do X at Y time in Z location. There's great research about just saying out loud the intention makes you more likely to do it. And if you share it with someone else, you're even more likely to do it. And part of it is because you have to think through, how am I actually even going to apply these things? So if you don't take anything else from today, just take that. If you can flesh out that intention making, then you're going to be already ahead of the game. But I also want to talk about mindfulness here, as we're going to be transitioning into our discussion with Glenn in just a moment.
My 2 cents about that helped me when I was doing Weight Watchers when I lost my 50 pounds about 8 years ago now, or started it. It was a 4 or 5 year journey. But one of the things was, look, there's things I need snacks to keep going, especially at night when I'm working. And then it's just a matter of like, what are the best snacks? And I basically started keeping almonds, and they're in season a lot of the year out here in California. But I love green grapes, seedless grapes, those, and almonds. And I do like my ice cream. I'm an Okie boy, but Skinny Cow, no advertising, I'm just saying. I had one right before the show. So it's like, find the thing that's going to get you, like, fake it. Smoke candy cigarettes. I'm kidding, but, find that. And if you're going to, that way you're still doing what you like to do, but just find the healthiest. I hate to say, it's not like a health freak, but find the least damaging way to get what you want done. And least damaging is a negative, I know, but you know what I'm saying? So, like, find the best alternatives for what you can do, and be happy with them and do it.
Yeah, I completely agree, Larry. It's and that's what I mean by when I say things like um, make it make the behavior change, make it lazy. So
Yeah. Yes.
like make it very easy for you to do things that are more consistent with the changes you want to make. If you want to have less junk food, the best thing is to
Mhm.
not have that junk food in your home and instead have other snacks that taste good, that feel good to you. So I want to bring in our guest here. Um, Hi, Glenn.
Hi, it's Glenn. Yes.
Hi, Glenn.
Can
I
you hear
brought
me?
you on, but I booted off Larry by mistake. So let me see if I can add Larry here. I am so sorry, Larry. I have done this a number of times to Larry. Hopefully I can bring Larry back in. Larry, you can probably
I
hear us,
think.
but we can't see you. And there we go.
Yeah. Hey. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Glenn. Good to meet.
Nice to meet you all. I actually I'm getting you twice now, so
You.
I'm getting
You're what?
two images of Larry. So I think I've got his mirror universe evil twin as well.
It's, which of these beards is the evil beard? Yeah.
Oh, they're all evil. They're all evil.
So I
No,
want
you're the
to
good one. Got your Christmas tree. I can see you're the good one, but I've got the evil one over here. He hasn't got. He's.
They
I
don't
think you're in
celebrate
some.
Christmas in the or in the mirror universe. Glenn, I want to just introduce you to the Life Support Live community here. Glenn Dakin, am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Bacon, yeah.
Yes. Is a cartoonist and a writer. He's the author of the Candleman book series, and has contributed to a number of British comics, including Escape and Deadline, and he was part of the
Wow, you've
British small
really
press.
read me up.
Yeah, comic seed in the 1980s.
You can't
His
escape.
main creations are Temptation and a semi-autobiographical script, Abe. Glenn and the Hero Collector creative team are based in London, England. And Glenn, you are the author of two books we were talking about today. Larry, you want to hold them up
Well,
for us?
this one we were talking about the mental health aspects of cocktails.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a
But also we've been showing it off here too, and we're going to give away a copy today. But Mr. Spock's little book of mindfulness, which
excellent.
hello, Glenn. I want to say first off, yay, boo 2020, because I'm sure that somewhere along the way, Vegas or New York Comic Con or Destination or somewhere, we would have otherwise gotten to say hello in person. But this is, as most of the year's been, this is a great way to make up for that. So I'm glad we could
Yeah,
catch up and
means I can
meet.
still make my family's dinner at the same time.
Yeah, there's silver
That's
linings
very
on all of it.
2020. Yeah, that's just a very 2020 thing. Glenn, I'm curious. So I saw on Twitter you tweeted out an image of your books and I Am Spock, an autographed edition of I Am Spock, which is a really important book for me. I'm just curious, what's your Star Trek origin story? How did
Yeah.
you find yourself on this path?
Because there's no way you're faking it after. I mean, you could fake. You could look up a list of drinks and come up with drinks. But I want to say also that this is way more than I was expecting. I was expecting a collection of Spock sayings with some stitching, to stitch it together. And you gave your street cred away, sir, on this one. If not already, I'm just telling everybody that it's not just a collection of little Spock sayings.
No,
They're in there, but you've got and a twinkle to it all too.
there's a kind of it's kind of a commentary on what Mr. Spock, on his wisdom, and it's not just all the quotes you already know stuck in a book, interesting with an interesting font and a couple of photographs you've seen before. It's a completely new project. To answer the first question, I came into Star Trek in a strange way because completely missed the original series when I was a kid. I think partly because my parents used to watch The Other Side. I think there's no in those days there was no even video recorders when I was a kid, and I just think they didn't tell me about it. So a couple of my mates at school were discussing this amazing TV show where everyone traveled around in a spaceship and had amazing adventures every week. And frankly, I didn't believe them. It all sounded too good to be true. Because on the English TV show Doctor Who, you would get a new story every 6 weeks because they couldn't afford to build new sets. But on Star Trek, you would get a new story literally every week, a new planet. And I thought, doesn't sound possible. So I sort of was very eager to catch up with it on the repeats. And by then, I was gutted to find out that the show had been stopped, and we were forced to watch the animation. Which people are kind of looking at again now because of Lower Decks. It was blazing a trail. And there's some interesting stuff. We've actually used quotes from the Star Trek animation in Mr. Spock's Book of Mindfulness, because there is a very thoughtful episode in there where Spock goes back and meets his childhood self, which is, what... Right. So
one of my favorite episodes of the animated series.
I know. I think it's regarded as probably the most interesting episode of that series, except for the one with the giant slugs that have elephants' trunks. That's another classic, of course. But
people have been cheating on yesteryear. In fact, it's even in the 2009 movie when they weren't.
Yeah, it's pretty much the 2009 movie. Glenn, how did this project come to be? Were you very interested in Spock? Were you very interested in mindfulness? How did you bring all this together?
I mean, because again, this is a range. So I was curious too when you were sitting down. Was it because I want to know what your background is? Because, like I said, you betrayed much more than just collecting Spock sayings here.
Yes, I used to write for a Marvel UK Star Trek magazine back in the 80s when Next Gen first came along. And in recent years, I've been working a lot with Hero Collector, who are part of Eagle Moss, who do a lot of Star Trek spaceship models. And I've been writing loads of stuff for them about Batman, Marvel comics. I've done loads of articles about Stan Lee. I could have a whole book about Stan Lee. But I've been working on other fantasy things, and also... I'm also like a cartoonist and a humorist. I've written for TV, animation, comedy sketch shows and things. And Ben Robinson, who is one of the project managers at Eagle Moss, I'm often boring him in coffee break, when we used to have coffee breaks, when we used to all go into the office, telling him about my latest exertions in the field of yoga. In fact, I've been to a back-breaking yoga class this afternoon. I've just been... doing this thing called Supta Virasana, and if you think yoga is easy, Google that. And
that sounds like something I am not interested in doing. It sounds very difficult.
It sounds like something Bajoran or Vulcan or something.
It would be a lot easier. It'd be a lot easier to do for somebody like Odo when your form can kind of flow into it in various ways. If you weren't trapped in one humanoid form, it'd be a lot easier to achieve some of these things. Anyway, I was often discussing yoga and arguing about Star Trek with Ben, and then one day he said, we could get this together into a kind of an approach on Vulcan thinking. People might be amused by a Mr. Spock Book of Mindfulness, and we must have spent about a year talking about this over cups of coffee, or almost as if it was a gag. But there was a lot there. And as a kid, it was funny because while other children were out enjoying their lives, I used to enjoy reading books on philosophy. In fact, I had the book of Tao Wisdom out for so long from my school library, that they thought it had disappeared from existence. I used to read the fables of Middle Eastern mystics and things when other children were reading 2000 AD. So, so I've been fascinated not just by philosophy, but by the humorous side of it. It's quite a tradition. It's quite a tradition in Middle Eastern thought to make philosophy funny so that people will remember it and pass the stories on. There's a character called the Mullah Nasruddin, who's a very famous character, and there's one story where he's outside his hut, looking on the ground for something, and somebody comes by and says, "What are you looking for, Master? What are you up to?" And he says, "Oh, my wife dropped her wedding ring inside the house, and we can't find it anywhere." And they say to him, "Well, why are you looking for it out here?" He says, "Well, there's more light out here." And that's a kind of way of saying that people are looking for wisdom and truth in the wrong place, or that people will only look where it's easy to get an answer rather than looking into looking at the hard place, trying to solve the actual problem. So there's a kind of a tradition of that, and there's a lovely book by a man called Idris Shah who discusses this kind of philosophy. And I wanted the Spock book to be a bit like that, with cartoons, jokes, little parallels with modern life, like what are we doing with our lives kind of thing, so there is more to it than just a bunch of quotes. There's philosophy, or attempted quixotic attacks on thought, lazy modern thought, and lazy ways of living your life, trying to shake people up a bit and make them laugh at the same time.
Well, I was going to say, can I just say, you do all the illustration here, so there's a whimsy.
And the illustrations are beautiful. Some of those I want just as a poster.
I mean, the front cover too. You see that, but
And-
that style really lends itself to what you're trying to do, is what I'm saying.
When we had the idea of the book, it was suggested that I did the cartoons as well, and it was when I drew this that I thought it might work. This first image of Spock in his kind of movie Spock. This is some people don't know this, but there are different versions of Spock. There's animation Spock, movie Spock, Discovery. Beardy Spock, evil Spock. And when I drew this, I thought this is the Spock I like, the guy who goes wandering around in a robe, saying baffling things like nothing unreal exists, and like in talking to whales. The Voyage Home Spock, I think, is a great one of my favorite versions of Spock.
Your cover Spock is deep nasal labial fold Spock.
Hey, we
Glenn,
cartoonists have to draw something.
I'm wondering, for our audience that might be more familiar with Spock than mindfulness, I'm going to ask you the impossible question of how do you summarize what mindfulness even is?
I mean, mindfulness is very simple, but it's not just being thoughtful. Some people misinterpret mindfulness as thoughtfulness. Being mindful is about learning to live in the present. It's about being non-judgmental, accepting things the way they are. Don't go into a situation where you meet someone who you've always hated, expecting to hate them. This might be the day that they surprise you. And so it's about living in the now, which is a big thing with Mr. Spock. We've got a whole section of that in the second series of Discovery. Spock says now is all we have, and there are some schools of philosophical thought that say now is literally all there is, and everything in the past is gone, the future isn't here. Now is the only thing that we have, and it's the tool that we have to change things. If you can learn to do things actually right now, the world becomes your oyster. It's when you start lamenting about the past or putting things off to the future that you're kind of a lost soul. But if you learn to do something right now, you're actually changing reality. And that's a point that Spock makes to Burnham in Discovery, where they're thinking of playing 3D chess together, as two Vulcan people obviously would. They wouldn't just watch a Netflix or something together. They would maybe have a game of 3D chess and sort out the universe, and that was what they did, I think. And he says it's like a game of chess. The board is yours. You've got to do something with that chessboard of life, kind of thing. Actually, that wasn't as corny as I just said, but anyway, he says the board is yours.
You have there's many parts of this book that I found myself really thinking deeply about. There's one part I want to specifically emphasize here. I just want to read an excerpt from this because I thought it was the most beautiful description of Idic that I have ever come across. So you're right. Vulcans may appear conservative and stuffy on first acquaintance, but they are in fact very open-minded compared to many races, including our own. The Vulcan belief is summed up by the term idic, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. In simple terms, Vulcans refer to the combination of a number of things to make existence worthwhile. That's why a Vulcan will make friends with a sentient rock, shoot the breeze with a glowing cloud, enjoy small talk with a microbe, and share a song with a whale. And the Vulcan will happily take the side of those things in an argument against humanity. That just it really made me stop and think about how Vulcans do approach diversity in an open mind and do not make assumptions about the value of this life. I thought that was completely profound as it relates to Star Trek and as it relates to mindfulness.
Yes, I mean it's interesting because when you watch the Star Trek adventures, especially the original series, it goes through into the movies. There is a kind of line that goes through Spock, and there is an element of comedy to it, but he will quite happily, like in Devil in the Dark, sort of mind meld with a moving rock. But he'll find out that rock is a mother and it's protecting its children. And it was this kind of attitude that the world needed, because there's a lot of hard set attitudes in people's minds about who is us and who is them, and who is on our side and who isn't. And Spock was used as a kind of key to, as a way of opening people's minds. And very cleverly, they kind of set McCoy against him, who would be a bit more narrow-minded in a way, or a bit harder to convince. And I know when I was a kid, I was always rooting for Spock. Like everyone else is losing their heads, but he won't see a monster when he sees an ugly creature. He'll see a life form, an interesting life form. Actually, it's quite funny. I was discussing this about the Mandalorian recently, and on the there, if they see an ugly creature, they blow it up. But that's still in their approach to life, But it's a great show, by the way. I absolutely enjoy the new series of the Mandalorian, but it's a different approach, in Spock. Yeah. Spock is always looking for the mind behind the mirage. He'll see a light in the sky and realize that it could actually be a sentient being, and whereas everybody else thinks it's going to be the end of the world or something, to him it could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And I love that. I think that's a big message that science fiction and Gene Roddenberry were trying to put across to us in the late 60s, and that he came back with Next Generation, where he put a kind of more general open-mindedness across the board into Next Generation. Like Picard was a kind of enlightened, almost Spock-like figure. He reasoned things out and he was articulate, and so he kind of took it one step further in a way. Whereas Spock was a bit like a voice crying in the wilderness in the original series, but his message had kind of got 60s. Home in Next Generation. So they even have a ship's counselor, and they're much more woke on Next Gen than they were on the original series. Although we mustn't underestimate the original series; they're actually very open-minded. To be honest, but people often remember Kirk blowing things up and saying, "Come in peace, shoot to kill," that kind of thing. But actually,
we come in peace, shoot to kill. Glenn, there's two parts in the book that you mention where I think there's a huge impact on 2020, the pandemic, and this world we live in. And I just want to share these with you. So you talk about the relationship between technology and people, and there's this great quote you mentioned about from Spock: "Computers make excellent and efficient servants, but I have no wish to serve under them." And you also later on mention nothing unreal exists as a lesson about living in the moment and controlling your focus, and both focus with technology as mentioned earlier, but also a focus on the here and now. I'm wondering what, as you went through this book, the process of writing this book and thinking about and living in Spock's mind, Spock's brain for so long. What lesson have you taken away from Spock that has most helped you with this wild and wacky year that we've been living in now?
I think the thing that came across to me was that Spock wouldn't see a pandemic so much as a problem as an opportunity. It's an opportunity if you can't go out to go in. It's a chance to explore yourself and mentally, your spiritual side, maybe learn things, be creative. I mean, people like me, writers, we've had a chance to sit down and get on with creative things and write things which we wouldn't perhaps have been able to do before. And I think Spock is a great problem solver because he looks at things as they are, not as he would want them to be. And that's a mindfulness thing. Don't sit around thinking, if only it wasn't like this. It is like this. So what can I do? And I know that whereas Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock generally could solve any problem within about 45 minutes. Well, we don't get the adverts in the UK, so the shows were about 45 minutes, I think. So they would have had this all done by now. McCoy would have had the hypo out, and either kill 'em or cure 'em, Jim. They didn't wait for things to get approval, vaccines to get approval on Star Trek. They just said this will either kill him or cure him, and they did it. But don't try that at home. Don't
try this at home, kid.
Yeah, so I think that's what I learned a lot from this book.
Yeah.
I was impressed with the character as a problem solver, somebody who faces things as they actually are, and takes an opportunity, turns a setback into an opportunity. Actually, that sounds like what they say about Kirk in Search for Spock, turning something into a decent chance to live. So I guess I would say I learned not to complain about the way things are and to try and do something positive with the time. I've even been drawing more. I've been playing guitar more, writing books more, and I've learned how to cook lots of things I could never cook before. So I'm like everyone else. I'm looking forward to things getting a bit more normal. But I think you can learn from philosophy, but I'll tell you what is a very interesting piece of wisdom. Somebody once said it takes more wisdom to benefit from to listen to advice than it does to give it. And people simply cannot take good advice. And, it takes an awful lot of self-knowledge to realize that person is you who's doing something wrong or who could do better. And I would say you've really got to listen sometimes when people take the time out to comment or give you some advice or tell you something. Don't just say shut up. So I guess that's
especially when it's not at a high decibel level. Maybe then too, but if it's actually thoughtful, then yeah, try to find a way to accept it.
Larry, I've got a good idea for. I think it might be a good idea for our giveaway. Our chat, Glenn, came alive with people sharing their favorite versions of Spock. I'm wondering if we can read those out, and Glenn might pick his second favorite besides Moody Spock, and that might be our giveaway. Larry, what do you think?
I think so, but I hope we have time left that I can do my part of the interview sometime.
Yes. So I just want to say, folks, please.
I'm not trying to compete on the mindful. Yeah. So let's
give us your favorite example
idea.
of Spock if you haven't picked it already,
idea.
and we'll have Glenn pick the winner. So
I would almost read. Well, everybody can see your example. I started to say I'd read some, but that might look like it's unfavorable advantage or whatever. Yeah. No, Hi, Glenn. We've never had a chance to talk before, but I've been a chronicler of the behind the scenes and the canon side of things. And like I said, one of the surprising things about this was the meta of it. It's about Spock, about mindfulness, and your own sense of humor through here. But part of that is the writer coming through. I know enough to know, like all the script writers over the years, the kinds of things I would get to with them after we would talk about the surface story was there's some moments here that I chuckled out loud, if not an absolute laugh. So I wanted to ask you, you've created some famous philosophers here from different cultures, and named them. And I was just wondering things like some of these names, like the Vulcan philosopher Sorvin, and the Grand Nagus Vok. I just some of these names, and are you drawing on something just from that created from this, or something from experience, or some of your own? Are these old player characters from when you D&D'd Star Trek? Or, I'm just curious about the origin of some of your narrative characters here. The Andorian Shore Corps. Yeah.
Some of these are characters I made up when I was 6, and wrote my own stories about. Some of them are real referenced characters. Some of the obviously Vulcan philosophers have been referenced in the series,
right?
But there was a couple of. What happened was I actually wanted to use some real life wisdom in the book, so I wanted to take some quotes from real people, like Mark Twain saying, "I faced many troubles in my life, but most of them never happened," and we anticipate and we fear things, and most of them are never as bad as we think, but yet we kind of live through the fear. It's the old Shakespeare thing: a coward dies 100 times before his death. But I wanted those things in there, so I discussed it, and it was people said keep the quotes in, but let's attribute them so as not to break up the atmosphere, the science fictional atmosphere of the book. So it may be that one or two things I have completely made up the name, but I wouldn't like to admit to that in case
well,
it spoils the book for anybody. But we actually did ask for permission, if we were allowed to do this kind of thing, because obviously the whole book's been vetted by CBS, etc. So if there had been a problem with any of it, or if any of those hadn't actually been Vulcan philosophers, I'm sure they would have pointed it out.
Well, and just for those wondering now, hopefully we've got a lot of people curious about this. No, everything from the names, like the Ferengi politician Quig. I mean, some of these are great, but no, you take a couple of pages to talk about and this the Vulcan's tale of the second Lurpa has a close relative in the Buddhist parable of the second arrow. So I didn't want to just raid the do a kind of Indiana Jones type raid on the wisdom of the ancients and try and take all the credit myself. So I said, can we have a kind of attribution section in the back? Yes. So I'm particularly fond of that the fable about the second Lurpa, which started out on humans know that tale as the tale of the second arrow. And it's like, if you were walking along and someone fired an arrow in your leg, would you immediately take the bow off of them and fire a second arrow in exactly the same place? And it's a very good illustration of how, if we get a misfortune in life, if we let that misfortune preoccupy us, we defeat ourselves. The first arrow you can't do anything about, the misfortune, but you don't have to spend your whole time whining about it, not getting on with your life. You don't have to fire the second arrow. So things like that to keep up the style and the fun of the book. We've kind of gone away and found a Vulcan version. Well, that's the that's the sneaky thing about this I wasn't expecting. But yes, in the finest Star Trek tradition of masking everything in Star Trek and 20, no, I just have to say I was really delighted that, and then you do have a handy collection for all the purists here, and it's like a 4-page index, where you actually get to the nitty gritty of citing the chapter and verse of all the scripture that you quote right from Spock and right from the episodes, so people can.
Yeah, so if people want to go away and watch the episode and see where the quote is in context, they don't have to spend 20 weeks looking through every episode. They can just go straight. They just have to go. They can go.
They
straight.
do that anyway.
Yeah. Well,
that's just what we do.
I've watched the entirety of Next Generation in lockdown since March, I've watched every single episode of Next Gen. I finished about a week ago. So people really do stuff like this. I know I'm proof.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think all three of us have been doing a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay, here's last question. This just leaped off the page at me. You made some allusion to the guy that swaps out plastic rented office plants every 3 months. That just sounds like it's screaming from something. That just sounds like it has a story behind it.
Do you know what? That proves to me that you really have read that book.
Not the entire one, but what I've read.
No, but the fact that you found that. Well, I'll tell you what is funny, because I do, and I'm also a fan of Sherlock Holmes, and he says there is nothing so interesting as, as trifles. There's nothing so important, and it's these strange details that really sum up the society that we live in. And this was a couple of years ago in the office. I wandered through, and I saw somebody taking down a pot plant from the reception and replacing it with an identical copy. These aren't plastic; these are living plants.
Oh, okay.
And there's like a company that provide plants for offices, so that these plants always seem to be in peak condition. The moment the plant goes slightly off, it's replaced with a duplicate. And this is it's somebody's job to go around offices in London replacing office plants with identical copies. And I just thought, what an incredible world we live in, that this is considered sane, normal behavior.
It's very Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I know what happens to is there a sort of sad world of rejected plants somewhere? Where do they go? What do they do with them? I mean, is there like a massive vault somewhere with all these slightly imperfect office plants wilting away, or do they take them somewhere and cure them? And I don't know. Anyway, but that really that kind of thing. But see, that person who has that job, they have their story. There might be a wonderful dream behind the desire to fill boring office spaces with lovely plants.
Right.
I'm thinking poison ivy out of Batman might be behind it. It could be there could be some kind of evil mastermind behind it, or it could be some very idealistic project. So there's a story there, but I don't know yet what the ending is. But...
Yeah, the Sulu Foundation. No, as you wondered where they went, the first thing that leaped to my mind was the Island of Misfit Toys from the Rudolph special. Where do they go when they're taken away?
Glenn, we know your time is limited, and we'd love for you to pick the winner here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off the different Spocks. There's a lot of them. And let us know which one.
We could do a whole collection of Spocks if we... we could Hero Collector. We could do a whole collection of Spock.
Oh, so yeah.
Definitely a poster series, or stationery or something.
Oh my gosh, that would be a poster, like all the emotions of Spock, and there you go.
We could do a movie like the Into the Spockiverse, where Mr. Spock meets all the other Spocks, and in some strange jazzy landscape of graphics. It'd be great.
Well, it seems like that's the direction that Discovery is headed. So I think we would love to see that. So we've got Shouty Spock, Smiling in the Cage Spock, Sexy Spock, Mind Melding Spock, Tuna Melting Spock, Sibling Repressing Spock, Checkmating Spock, One Eyebrow Up Spock.
That is a good Spock.
Ponfar Spock. Bipolar Spock from Star Trek Into Darkness. Animated Spock. 50-foot Spock. Maiden Wine Spock. Unification Spock. Ambassador Spock. I don't know. Those might be the same Spock. Double Eyelid Spock.
Yeah, that's a bit of a cheat where he suddenly says he's got a double eyelid.
Right.
I mean, why did he never mention that?
Glenn, you really want to go down that road? Yeah. Say that one again. Ollie, say that one again.
That was High on Spores Spock. Sibling Denying
that's
Spock.
Interesting. Sorry, what was the last one?
Sibling denying Spock, which I think we already had before.
Yeah, he's got a lot of siblings for somebody who seemed to be such a loner. He's got a lot of family out there.
Jailbreaking Spock, also from another Glenn.
Romulan. Did you miss? There's a Spock's relationship with his mother, Spock, and not a Herbert Spock.
Not a Herbert
Spock.
Spock.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
He's
covered
so,
ears.
So cool.
Covered ears because Jim took us on a time travel adventure against Spock.
Oh, I've already said I like that one. Yeah, the covered ears Spock.
This is going to be hard.
Spock. Contempting shaving Spock. Swimming with whale Spock. Colorful metaphor Spock.
Colorful metaphor Spock.
Did you get Romulan seducing Spock?
Yeah, we got Romulan seducing Spock.
Okay, I didn't. Okay.
Disinvited to dinner Spock. The one time I smiled Spock. My gosh, there's a lot of them. Karate Spock. The Wrath of Khan Spock, who shows more emotion and a subtle. Glenn, that's a long one.
Glenn said more than one. Not this Glenn. Glenn in our chat, Glenn.
36 months calendar Spock. In 2 minds Spock. And that's it. That's a lot of them.
36-month calendar Spock. I'm not sure about that one. I don't believe because I don't believe there is a tuna melting Spock. I don't believe he ever did that. I'm not convinced about tuna melting Spock.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to have to go, since I've already said how much I like Voyage Home. I think I'm going to have to go for covered ears Spock with the old headband.
There we go. Alrighty. We've got a winner chicken dinner. If I can find the person who said that one.
I'm rolling back.
So, Glenn, are you referring to covered ears because Jim took us on a time travel adventure against Spock? That one?
That is the one. Yep. I'm going to have to go for that one.
Charlotte, you are the winner. Congratulations, Yay. Charlotte. Larry will get in touch so we can get the book out to you.
Charlotte.
Sorry, live long and prosper. Glenn, thank you so much for taking the time. We know this is an important time for you and your family right now. We're cutting into tea time. So thank you so much. Tea time, British tea time, not American tea time.
You know how important tea time is in England. I mean, it's all we've got left.
It's all we've got. Glenn, how can people stay in touch and see more of your work?
Well, I've got a website, glenndakin.com. Through there, you can see some of the other books I've been working on, like we did one, The Quibbles with Tribbles, where we've put loads of funny mistakes into old episodes of Star Trek, which you will find hilariously annoying if you're a fan of everything not having mistakes. I believe there is a copy of that book, yes. So you can find about some other stuff there. I'm going to be posting some of my own cartoons up there as well. So I guess through glenndakin.com, but like everything else, just Google around. You'll see I've done loads of crazy things in my life, written lots of strange books like Candleman and fantasy adventures and cartoons. I've got a autobiographical cartoon character, Abe, who kind of is like a version of me, and so I mean, I've just wasted my life on too many silly things like to possibly list them here. If you want to, if you're interested in them, I suggest that you have a look round. Yeah, have a look round.
Well, thank you so much.
Are you doing Twitter or Instagram or anything?
Yes, I'm on Twitter under my name, not anything fancy, schmancy. So you'll see me on there, and it's been quite fun seeing people trying the Star Trek cocktails on Twitter. That's been fun. Mm-hmm. People have been posting cocktails and saying what they think of them. That's been great fun. And,
Kayla on Trek Movie did a great video.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's been brilliant seeing people enjoying them and having a go at them. And so, yeah, Twitter, and you can find me in all the usual places. And what can I say?
Well,
good.
Thank you so much. Give our best to your family, and of course, live long and prosper, Glenn.
Yes,
absolutely.
Look forward to doing this live sometime, Glenn.
Great, and hopefully I'll meet you guys sometime. Yeah, maybe next year or something. We'll be back in real life.
Would love to make it so.
Yes.
Nice to chat to you. you very much
Very
for
good. Trek well, Glenn.
It's been great conversation. Thank you.
Take care. And we are back with Life
We're
Support
back to-
Live. Larry, that was awesome.
Yes.
That was so much
It
fun.
was.
I wish
And,
we had.
And 9 months ago, not how I thought our first guest would go, but it was awesome. I mean, just the way I thought of, envisioned who we would be having. So, and that door's still wide open, but that was awesome. I'm glad. So I want to give a shout out here to Ian, who worked on StarTrek.com for years and years. And oh no, are we okay?
We're okay.
That's not
we
me.
We just had a disruption in the space-time continuum again.
Was that you, or was that just Skype deciding?
That was me. That was me.
Okay.
I pressed the wrong button.
As long as we have it figured out. Okay. Anyway, so thanks to them for they've done a huge. I mean, Glenn had the Quibbles book a few months ago. It's all relative to the same time, and these two now, and they're very deceptively. I mean, like, a cocktails book, that's fun. Just guys, just so you know, I mean, these are like hardback books, and they're not.
They're really great gifts. They're
and the mindfulness book. I said it 5 times, but this is I'm on my way to 47. But it's really far more than you expect. It's not just your little pick it up in the checkout line type, paperback. It's a hardback, and because I was expecting a couple of days ago to sit down and zoom through this, and I didn't get all the way. I got a chunk of it done, but I was really surprised that he puts a lot of meat on the bones.
You read through it, and you really what really shines through is how much Glenn really cares about the philosophy, mindfulness, and Spock. Like, I really stopped myself.
And Star Trek as a whole.
Yeah, and Star Trek as a whole. I really stopped myself when I read that description of Idic, because it was such a beautiful summary of what the concept actually means and how it's been shown in the episodes. I have so many more notes I couldn't get to, but there's another section of the book that talks about the evolution of the needs of the many versus the needs of the one, or the needs of the few or the one, and how Spock's relationship to that changes in Star Trek II, Star Trek III, and Star Trek IV, which, when I thought about it, I'm like, wow, I never really thought about the evolution in his thinking. It's just a beautiful book, Larry. It's I was really struck by how thoughtful it is.
Very deceptively. I'm so used to so many books, Star Trek and otherwise, that are just quickie little. Oh, look, here's a little gift book. I'll get to somebody, and it says Star Trek. The old they just slapped Star Trek on it and sold it.
Yeah,
that's not what's going on here. So yeah, and his draw. I had it for a few days before who's the artist? Oh, it's him.
You know what it reminds me of is The Next Generation Season 8, and how that book came together just from a series of tweets, and how that then later became this book, and then later,
I have everything at fingertips. I don't know why that's happening today. Yeah.
And how that later kind of became Lower Decks. I love that Glenn's idea for this book really came from just a series of coffee conversations he had with the folks over at Hero Collector.
With Ben.
Yeah.
Ben Robinson. Yeah, which, is on the sad side is another reminder of the kinds of things we could do that are really hard to do on Zoom. Although there's people I know, and a couple of them work on the shows, they just have their Zoom on. I never think about Zoom being like a Slack channel, but a lot of people use Zoom like texting or Slack or something, where it's just on all day, and somebody comes on and says, hey, we need to talk about this. And it's the next best thing to stopping in somebody's office or walking around the art room and looking at everybody's drawing board. I mean, those kinds of collaborative channels that we think of being shut down. And once again, yay on, humanity coming through in a crisis with a silver lining way of getting things done anyway. But yeah, as he was talking about that, I was like, that's where some of the best stuff comes from, is those informal discussions.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where the show came from, Life Support Live. And we didn't have the time to get into it, given how... And folks, you should know that Glenn, not only was he in the UK, but this is his tea time with his family. And so when we asked him if he could participate, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll make the time for you all. but we were cutting into his precious time with family, and so that
Right.
was it was quite kind of him to
Week before
to join
Christmas.
us.
Right.
Yeah. If we had more time, I would want to talk about the relationship between mindfulness and making a big change, because a lot of people think of mindfulness as feeling better, but as Glenn talks about in the book, it's not necessarily about feeling better, but it's about feeling more, and it's about being more present and approaching things with an open mind. And a lot of the examples of making a big change, Larry, that you wanted to talk about actually this week are all about acceptance and approaching things in this open, more mindful way. I have this list over here where Spock is coming to terms with his feelings. Kirk coming to terms with his loss over his son. O'Brien coming to terms with being on this Cardassian station that doesn't really work. Cisco coming to terms with being in this emissary role, this role that he never asked for. Neelix coming to terms with his breakup. There's so many examples in Star Trek of characters that are approaching things in a more mindful way. Spock is, of course, the biggest example, but there's a lot of examples here.
I mean, I only avoided Picard because there were so many. I mean, you had said Picard dealing with the XBs, although to me that was more like it wasn't even on the radar, kind of accepting it. Not that he knew them and had a, but Starfleet, Clancy, and if that's a general attitude of Starfleet, coming to a change about viewing, the whole XB prejudice or whatever, the hate wave, whatever, was actually manufactured. So on one hand, coming to grips with the reality behind a propaganda wave that worked, behind a fake news wave that worked. I know this is behind the scenes too. You had down one of your topics for Glenn. Our interview was mindfulness and social media and the whole fake news, the wave that we're in now, and about what that, and we didn't get to that, but and he has a chapter. What was the chapter?
The chapter on focus.
Yeah, on focus.
Yeah.
It's
falling
for disinformation and being grounded, and as I always say, check your sources.
He also has a chapter on family, which I wanted to, if we had more time, I wanted to ask Glenn about what's going on with Sarek and all of the the half brother, the adopted sister. Why aren't they so open about this stuff?
Now I kick myself for not even bringing up Cybok in the whole thing. So
right. But folks, we want to really open up the hailing frequencies here.
Yeah, we got.
You all have been so.
I know
amazing.
there was a huge chunk of chat that we were getting into having Glenn on, and there was a lot of meaty stuff happening, guys. I just want to say, and I saw somebody said, "Oh, here's where they're going to start ignoring this." At one point, so sorry about that. We lost. We lost half an hour to dabble in chat, but I thought it was a great 20 or so minutes there we had with Glenn. He was very generous with his time.
Yeah, Jesse says more Cybok, please. I don't know if we'll ever see. Maybe on Brave New Worlds. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if we'll see Cybok again.
What we need to have happen is we need to have some character come on to Discovery that's like a half sibling, and then since I'm bowing to the masses stereotype here, since Michael's in every scene, we need to have her say, yeah, I had this older half foster brother. We need her to tell us a Cybok story in the time-honored tradition of Star Trek, doing the metaphor, analogy, parallel story, example from my life thing.
That might be coming.
His father helped me get into the academy,
I mean, Discovery is definitely referencing aspects of canon that I didn't think it would be doing. So maybe we'll see that. Who knows? Jesse, you might get your wish.
They're feeling more of their own oats. There's so much. We're only getting it in 10, 12 episode doses. But when you think about TNG starting off with, we can't say anything from the original series because it'll look like we're leaning on that. And they had to get comfortable in their own skin, and some of that may be some of the same thing with Discovery. I mean, we're even getting it in smaller, arc-driven serialized doses that it may take even longer.
Dan just said, "Brave New Worlds is not Strange New Worlds, Brave New Worlds." Thank you, Dan. Brave New Worlds
it was
would be
very brave of you to admit your mistake.
Well, that would be a very different series, Brave New Worlds.
Heaven knows I never do that. So yeah.
Yeah. Jared has asked a couple of times. Jared has asked a couple of times, Larry, to talk about our show schedule for the holidays.
Housekeeping.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of that before we.
It would be a good time for the two of us to talk about it too.
Yeah, right. Okay, folks. So we're skipping next Saturday's show. Again, it's like we did for Thanksgiving. We're taking that weekend off, so we won't be on a Saturday show for 2 weeks. But we are doing a fun screening like we did with Star Trek First Contact. We haven't decided what that might be. We also haven't decided when that might be. Larry, should we survey folks on the Facebook page again to see what?
Why don't we do that? That works.
Yeah.
And if you're not on the Facebook page, get there. Yes.
Yeah. So we are going to be doing a screening. We've had a few really good recommendations from folks about what to watch next. I think Libby recommended
the Rom story?
The Problem with Tribbles and Trials and Tribulations.
The Problem with Tribbles?
The Trouble with Tribbles. Thank you.
Somewhere David Jones' lawyer is writing a letter. Okay.
Oh, folks. There's also other things we could take on.
You just
Star
blew
Trek
out
Generations.
my life, Ollie. That was so ridiculous. Okay.
Whoa, what happened there, Larry? That was not me. I did not do
Battery.
that.
Yeah.
Battery. Yeah. What a metaphor for how we're feeling today. Other folks have mentioned Star Trek Generations as a Christmas movie. I think because there's a Christmas scene in it. There's also, we could do Tapestry. Tapestry is very much in the vein of It's a Wonderful Life. And if folks have other recommendations for the kind of show, the kind of viewing you want to do, let us know. That'll be we'd love to take more recommendations.
We'll do a poll survey. But we've got the movie, and then we need to find a date too as well.
Yeah,
so.
Movie or episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
The film thing. Yeah. But also we need to figure out a date too. And
so
are you talking about the week between Saturdays or what?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we have to figure out. I think we want to do it at a time when most people are available. And so we'll figure it out, folks. We'll figure that out through your.
A lot of people do have the week between. I always call it dead week because it's the week the world goes away and lets me get stuff done like cleanup. But not everyone has the week off, but a lot of people do. So.
Yeah. So that might be a good one for us.
Because they're chunking out the Discovery every week. I mean,
So here, I am not taking your bait here. I am not taking your bait today. Sorry, my friend.
He can't hook you, huh?
No, not today. No. Not today. The line must be drawn here.
And
Karen
where?
says, "Ollie, drink more coffee." That's what I intend to do. This is empty right here. There's nothing left.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Glenn says Boxing Day is when I tend to rewatch a great classic fights like Ali versus Foreman. Well, I'm a big Muhammad Ali fan. Maybe that's the day you can watch Ali versus Larry too. I don't know.
You can't get along with anybody, Ali. I swear.
Yeah, I know.
This is what led you to the career. Yeah. So 2nd January we'll be back. So does the day after New Year's have a special day in England, like Christmas does? Do we have Unboxing Day?
I think Tim asked. You might know the answer to this, Larry. Tim asked earlier if you know where Glenn is from, what part of the UK.
I saw that. I'm sorry, Tim. I meant to ask. I'm sure it's in his wiki biography, specifically what part or where he grew up.
Yeah, I think we knew the answer to that, and I just can't remember right now.
Might be in an email chain somewhere, but
A lot of folks are saying thank you for the interview. So thank you all, folks. We
that
want to
was
do
our
more of those.
yeah. Could you tell that was our first time to? Sorry if I trumped over you a time or two
No,
there.
no. I think I was doing the same with you. See, the thing is, I was really worried about the time pressure. They say time is the fire in which interviews
In which we
burn.
interview. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we had a very
Pause.
limited amount of time here, but folks, as Discovery ends and we kind of run out of new Star Trek, we want to do more of those kind of things, more deeper dives with folks in the Star Trek community around different topics. So if you like that, that's a little bit of what we are planning to do in the new year as new Star Trek runs out. So I hope you all like that.
Till we get
And
back
Glenn,
into a more animated stretch of time. Yeah.
yeah, and Glenn, I hope to resolve those issues with subspace as we get into the
He
new
lives.
year.
Glenn lives in Cambridge. He went to school in Manchester, so I don't know where he was actually born and raised. But there you go. That's what we've got on the run.
That's what we got. Yeah. Rose says 2nd of January is a holiday as well, and it's only 2 weeks away. So there we go. The Brits
Does
know
this
how to have their...
holiday, January 2nd holiday, have a name?
It's Boxing Day 2? I don't know. I have no idea.
This time it's serious. I don't know. This time it's for all the Latinum. Yeah, guys,
Victoria...
just to let you know, we had the idea of having more guests, Victoria. We've had an idea to do guests from day one, and we
Yes.
started down that path, and we had to kind of retool the idea. But I won't say it now, but we had an idea of a very specific kind of guest.
Yes.
And then as the months have rolled along, and we've all been trying to be mindful of how we make change and how we adapt to the situation. Not so much adapting, but just being more broad-minded, and the potential of this awesome platform that we have. So, this opportunity that we have. So anyway, so that was when Glenn came along. I was like, oh, look, a mindfulness book. That should be perfect. And we can do our bit to help the greater Star Trek along here. And I never met Glenn, so that was great to be able to at least meet this way. So yay. And I dare say, I bet he didn't do, if he's doing any interviews, I don't know how many he's doing live. And I bet he didn't do any interview quite like that. So
Yeah.
It's so good. So anyway, guys, sorry, I feel like I haven't been interacting with all of you all quite as much as normal, but you understand.
Jared says after the first of the year, we need to figure out what we're doing for our 1-year anniversary. Boy, that is...
We're gonna take our mobiles outside and do the show on the lawn with no mask.
Oh my gosh. That would be such a disaster in terms of the subspace communication.
I know.
Oh my gosh. It would be...
We can just zoom background a park or
yeah,
something.
I know.
I'll zoom my face without a mask on. Wait, I'm doing that now. Okay, go for it. Boxing Day this evening now in 3 days.
So I'm curious for our UK folks. Boxing Day is a traditional UK holiday the day after Christmas Day. Nothing to do with boxing. How did it get its name? For a ignorant American like myself, I have no idea. What is
it was
the
the
name
corrugated cardboard industry. They just got it through.
Like, I know where like bank holiday comes from, and I know some of my British terms, but I don't know where Boxing Day comes from. Dan says it's traditionally related to boxing's packaging. Is that true? Larry, I thought you were just making that up.
No, no, that's why, all American holidays are due to Hallmark. So,
Jared says the day you take the boxes out to the curb. I feel like I'm being I'm being toyed with. It can't possibly.
Jared is the old PhD of British culture there. Yeah.
Christoph
In
says
America,
it's boxing the returns, maybe? Folks, I feel like you're all toying with me. This can't possibly.
Which they have in the States. Back when I used to live in Oklahoma, and that's all I had to do when I was single, I would go with family when they all returned their stuff the day after Christmas. So
Yeah.
they'd trudge out to Target, or they'd trudge out to
Charlotte
Walmart.
says this is why we have Google, which, I could go Google this, but then this all would probably crash.
I feel like this is so unlike a normal episode of our show here, because we were so we weren't on pins and needles. We kind of rushed the beginning that we normally would stretch out anyway, and then coming down from, I think Glenn blew everybody away so much in the whole spectacle of our first epic episode here, that everybody's just kind of laying on the ground wiped out, and we're talking about Boxing Day.
Yeah, Cairo says the day after Christmas is a holiday here as well, but we call it Saint Stephanie's Day. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Stephanie, we have. I guess there's female saints. Of course, there's female saints. Right. I just hadn't thought of it or something. Giving gifts to mailmen, milkmen. Okay. Galinda says you take old stuff you don't need and put it in the boxes you got your new stuff out of, and you give it to someone less fortunate. You try to trick them into making them think they're going to get something new, and then they get something old. No, I'm kidding.
So
That's
Jared
rather
did
cool.
post a link to why is the day after Christmas called Boxing Day.
Because
Jared,
no
if you
one
could
can do that
summarize
on
that
their own. Thank
for
yes.
us, since we can't click on that link right now. Wow. Well, Larry, this has been...
What a holiday lead-in this show has been. Yes.
Yeah, well, getting into the holidays, I should say...
I don't. Did we sing or do an impersonation at all today?
Think so.
I think we had
I don't think we did. But Larry, getting into the holiday spirit, and this being, is this our last regular episode before the New Year? I think it is. We'll
it
have
is.
the
Yeah,
screening.
January 2nd.
Yeah,
right.
But this is the last normal. While 2020 has been nothing what I expected it to be, one of the great joys of this year has been all the Star Trek, and then also all the ways to share my love of Star Trek with you, with everyone here in the community. The year started with Star Trek Picard. We had Lower Decks. We have Star Trek Discovery. And we've had Life Support Live. We've had so much Star Trek to enjoy and love and celebrate and debate and discuss and complain and everything. So I'm so thankful to have you, to have this community, and to have this show that means so much to us to help us to boldly go. So just want to share that with you, Larry.
I was going to say silver linings. That here we go. What would have happened in an alternate timeline if the pandemic had not happened? We did our little panel at WonderCon, and that was fun. We should do more panels. We should make this an annual thing and have that be our panel at WonderCon or something, and that would have been it. And we would have missed having all this interaction and some of the things. We just. I know it may not seem like it, guys, but I still think with everything else going on, that in my world and in Ollie's world, that I still see there's greater things we can do with our idea here.
Yeah.
And with you all in our corner with us. And so, but none of that would have happened had it not been for the way 2020's timeline played out in the Prime Universe here, if we are indeed in the Prime Universe. So anyway, that's something to be to look back and be thankful for, be blessed for. I should have done this in November, but looking back at the year as a whole, that was in April that we've been doing this, 9 months here. 36. This is our number 36 today.
Yep.
So not counting the special. So
So it's a lot.
So it's good to see everybody. I'm glad Glenn could join us. We'll find some more. And I'm glad that went so well. And I'm glad everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, Larry, with the sad music now playing once again, we fixed the bug there. folks are sharing some really sweet messages here.
Oh,
Scott
yeah.
says, thank you so much for your time, knowledge, personalities, and joy. I don't use this word, but life support has been one of the great blessings of 2020. Thank you, Scott. That means a lot.
Oh,
Charlotte.
and Charlotte. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's a silver lining to 2020, it's finding my Life Support Live family and your free book, Charlotte. So, Zahir saying, with no exaggeration, Life Support Live got me through living alone, sheltering in place. Temba to you all. Thank you, Zahir. Dan saying, live long and prosper, have a great festive season. Tim says, by the time Life Support Live comes back, it will be episode 12 of Star Trek Discovery. We'll have a lot to talk about, I am sure. Jared says, if you want to join some of the chat regulars for video chat on Christmas Eve,
That's
check
right.
out the Facebook group. Thank you, Jared, for organizing that. I think that'll be just a lovely way to
I'll try to
stay
jump in
touch.
there because my Christmas Eve this year will be a little calmer than normal. So I'll see if I can get in.
Yeah, Larry, where can people find more of you this week?
Oh, well, if you want to throw up the K3 images, I totally forgot to say something. I'm at Larry Nemecek on Twitter and Larry Nemecek's Trekland, wherever you're watching us right now. And just to say, today's an absolute last day for mailing by Christmas, but through New Year's, we're doing the Portal 47 in a box. There you go. So go to LarryNemecek.com or Portal47.net. It's the most popular way of getting into Portal we've ever had. And also, a little bit of news here, even on holiday week, if you can pop up the other one, we picked a great time to come back from our extended hiatus, but the Trek Files, guys, for all you Trekophiles with an F out there, Trekophiles will be back this Tuesday. So I'll be back on Tuesday Twofers again with Trekland Live. And as of right now, I'm planning to do a Trekland Live both Tuesdays. So join me there, 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, and 9 GMT.
And with
We're
that,
there.
folks, live long and prosper. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody. Trek well.